from iCONIC New York, presented by Inc.com and also CNBC. So we're in the final home stretch. Some big closers coming your way, including the People's Shark. Yes, Shark Tank man Damon John is up on stage later on today. But let's talk to a man that was on the stage previously and earlier.
And so hopefully I started the
Still a big closer. Still a big closer. Che Huang of Box.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I like to call your company kind of like the Costco for millennials.
Fair.
It's fair.
It's fair. Yeah, we ship large items to folks all around the country with no membership fees.
Right, and you built up your company just in the last 4 years.
That's right. Less than 4 years ago, I had a tape gun in my hand in a two-car garage in central New Jersey. So we've come a long, long way since then.
How did you recognize the opportunity?
To this day, it's still one of the largest business opportunities that I could find. It's $200 billion of top line will be driven by just Costco, BJ's, and Sam's Club this year, and virtually 0% of that will be driven via mobile. So consumer-facing industry, 0% mobile at that size. We actually could not find a larger opportunity.
Yeah. You know, talking to a lot of entrepreneurs here at iCONIC, I find it fascinating that you're kind of reinventing the wheel. You're not inventing the wheel, you're just reinventing an industry that's already there. Like, how do you recognize the opportunity, even though there's a Costco and there are other big box retailers, bulk retailers, that there was a need for box?
So we thought of something very interesting, and when you walk into a CVS in the offline world, if you walk into a Duane Reade, those stores will look different from a Dollar General, from a Target, from a Walmart, from a Costco. But yet, when you add a .com to all those sites and you go online, they all look the same. And they all generally look like Amazon. But that's not core of who they are and what they do well. And so we felt there was a real need for folks to have that warehouse club experience online, discovery rather than spearfish shopping.
Right.
And we did that. Right.
Wow, okay. So is it all about having a .com at the end of your name? Is that the secret?
No, that's not the only secret. We have a really awesome experience where on average folks buy 8 to 10 items, and so we've really replicated that in-store shop online, when in general most folks only buy 1 to 2 things online.
And bulk is how millennials want to shop. I didn't think that was a way.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because perhaps urban millennials might have an issue with bulk if they're a single person in a 300 square foot apartment. But at the end of the day, there are millennials all across this country. There are millennials in urban areas, suburban areas, and rural areas where they don't have access to a warehouse club. So we span that gap pretty well.
Okay, so tell me about it, because you started this company in your garage, is that right?
That's right. Literally.
A 40-foot pod,
and
apparently.
For the folks out there, it's not as sexy as it sounds. I mean, it was a garage in central Jersey, so.
Okay, let's not understate it, because you started a company, you sold it to Zynga, right? So this is not your first company. You started with some pretty good capital as well.
Yeah, we did, but when you think about what we needed to do, buy inventory, ship that inventory, hire people, it actually wasn't a ton of money that we started with.
And also what I really like about your philosophy is that you always talk about the culture of the company. You don't want to hire the Tom Bradys and the single players and the superstars. You want to hire the team players.
That's right. We want to hire talented people who believe in team, because at the end of the day, it's all about the team. And you might think, oh, that's so cliched. But we recognize, and especially I recognize, the fact that if everyone back home at the office and in our fulfillment centers got up and left because they didn't like me or didn't like the mission, I couldn't do anything with the company at all by myself.
Right. And what I found really, really interesting and inspiring, by the way, by what you're doing, is you started a college tuition fund, is that right?
Yeah.
An education fund for your employees. Is this out of your own pocket?
Yeah, so that's out of my own pocket. We do other things connected with the company, but that particular fund is out of Uncle Huang's pocket. So post-tuition, no matter how well the company does, Uncle Huang's pocket's going to be pretty light. But I think at the end of the day, listen, we started this company in a garage in central Jersey. I've probably been to Taco Bell more often than not over the last 4 years, so I'll be just fine if Box does well, no matter how many tuitions we have to pay.
Wow, so this is so inspiring that the owner is starting a college tuition fund to pay for the tuition of all your employees' children in the future.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say it's so inspiring how many times I've had quesadillas over the last few days. And so,
Chalupa chicken tacos.
Yeah, both. Thank you very much.
All right, Che, thank you so much, and good to see you.
Thanks.
Che Huang there of Box. So, we were just talking to Che, who's a great entrepreneur as well, and coming up, I'll be we'll be speaking to others who are trying to teach as well, teaching how to always close a deal, right? How to negotiate. And we've been taking a look at the top moments as well at iCONIC. So why don't you take a look and a listen.
grew up, you didn't have a lot. You were in a street gang.
Yep.
You've been homeless.
Yep.
You've lived in your car.
Yep.
And now you're very successful. Your face is known all around the country and the world. Tell us the story.
Sure. I knew that I'd worked for other companies in the professional beauty industry, and I knew to start a professional hair care company, I had to have $500,000, $500,000. So this fellow named Dick Holthouse out of England with Citicorp found an investor in the island of Jersey. It's a tax-free haven, okay, between France and England. It's JP, I've got your investor. So I stopped doing everything I was doing. The relationship I was in at the time wasn't working. I had to leave it. So I left all the money there, except for a few $100s, the newer car, took the older car, and I was going to go down to the bank that day, and there was $500,000 there, and quit everything I was doing. Our new company, all excited. The money never showed up. And we didn't have cell phones in those days, so a friend of mine found me that evening at happy hour at El Torito, because for 99 cents you could buy a drink and have, free little goodies to eat there. I said, JP, I knew we'd find you there. Dick Holthouse got a hold of me and says, he's sorry to tell you this, but the backer pulled out. He wanted to tell you why. He says, call him, collect in England. That's where he is right now. Inflation in the United States in 1980 and 81 was 12.5%.
12.5%. Interest rates 17, 18%.
You got it. And unemployment 10.5%. And we waited in line for gasoline. He says, it's too risky. He didn't want it. He's really sorry. So here we are. No money. Like, oh my gosh. So I had in my pocket a few $100s. That's all I had because I knew all this money was coming in. So very long story short, the fellow I started the business with, who was the hairdresser, I was a businessman, he came on over. He was all excited. He was a little older than me, but on his last dollars, I said, we want to continue this, okay? How much can you afford? Because I'm out of money. I told him what happened. He says, JP, I'm on my last dollars, $350. I said, okay, I'm going to get $350 because I need a couple hundred to live on. So I went to my mom's house, who I could have easily said, Mom, I left my situation, but I was too proud. So I said, Mom, loan me $350. Well, Johnny, why do you need $350? You're a successful man. Mom, just loan it to me and give it back to you at the end of the month. Okay, son. I didn't have the guts to tell her because of my pride. Mom, can I have my old room back, which I knew was there? Will you feed me? I'm trying to start a business, get on my feet, right? And I was just too proud. So I knew I could sleep in my car, eat at Griffith Park, and when I was El Torito, 99 cents for a margarita, and it wasn't Patron, I promise you, okay? But
I bet it wasn't.
Yeah, no, but they gave you free salsa and chicken wings or little taquitos. Well, 20 of those later and you're full. Yeah. So there was food, okay? There was food once a day. And then, so I went to start this, I had 30-day credit set up with my vendors, my bottle man, my silk screener, my filler. They had no idea the money didn't come through. But I had to get the artwork first. So I went to the artist. He wanted $1,000 for the artwork on 3 products. Yeah, we already laid it out. You got to take that to the silk screener. And I told him the truth. Hey, man, only have $700. Can I give you $200 or $300 now and I'll pay you later? He goes, nope. He says, the bill's $1,000, but I'll take $700 because, and I'm sorry because I'm sure I wouldn't see it ever again. Yeah. I mean, I wish you good luck, son, but, we did all this work. So I said, okay. So that's when I realized I had a few $100s to live off of and lived in my car for a few weeks. And then I made phone calls and I got the bottle guy to ship everybody. Another long story short, from the time I pulled the trigger and it got to be filled, it was 2 weeks. You have to get the bottles here, silk screen. It was 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks before the first bill was due and no money to pay it. So I piled stuff in my car, took out the back seat, drove up Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles, going from beauty salon to beauty salon, presenting my products. And here's what it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways.
So you went door to door the way you had sold encyclopedias.
Exactly, when I was much younger. Door to door, and many were closed in my face, the majority. But I managed over about 3 days to get 12 orders, and on the spot they wrote me checks. I mean, anywhere from like $20 to I think my biggest one was $150, right? But I had 12. And I went down to the local beauty supply house and I said, hey, how you doing? John Paul DiGioria, the greatest products in the world. Will you be my distributor? He said, you're a nice guy, you're enthusiastic, but no, we have all the big lines. I mean, if you're a big distributor, you have Rick and you have Matrix, you have a Link Curtis, you have all these big lines, No, you're a new line. Why do we spend the money? You have no advertising. I said, well, sir, I have a reason. I was across the desk from him, and I pulled out 12 orders, put every one in front of them, opened them up. Each one had a check. I said, that's your first 12 orders, and there's the checks for them. And if you'll order from me $2,000, you could have the exclusive, we were really hard up for money, okay? The exclusive on all of Southern California, LA, San Diego, and I'll come back here and I will sell it with your salesman till it's gone. He laughed his head off and said, you know what, I've never heard a presentation like that, 12 orders. If you promise you'll be here, I'll take it. $2,000 order. I said, I have one more question. I said, his name was Jim. I said, Jim Henrietta, would you also please, because we're a startup, because I didn't have any money, I had bills due. I said, could you pay me when the order's delivered? He laughed his head off and said, we don't pay our bills for 45 days. I said, sir, please, I'll be here every single day. Give me a break. He goes, okay. Now, we invited him to our 25th year anniversary, and the way he told it was, so JP leaves my office, and about 3 minutes later, my warehouse man calls me and says, there's some guy with a big smile here, friendliest guy you'll ever imagine. He dropped off these products and wants $2,000. He said, he was just in my office. He said, well, apparently it was in his car, and that's how we got it.
Okay, so we have a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of people looking for a deal, but the question is, how do you negotiate the best deal? Well, let's talk to the master of negotiation, or a man who knows a lot about it. We have Harvard Business School professor Deepak Malhotra, who has also written a book, a few books, but the one that I like, the title is Negotiating the Impossible. Are entrepreneurs negotiating the impossible?
I think they often feel that way. I mean, what makes that book interesting is that often people feel that they're in a situation that's completely hopeless. They're in a situation where they're the weaker power, they're dealing with bigger companies, or they're strapped for cash, they don't have any muscle, they don't have any money, or they're dealing with situations where they have information asymmetry, or there's a lot of mistrust. So all of those situations naturally make people feel like this is not going to happen, this is impossible, this is a hopeless cause, and the book is designed to help people think through those situations more systematically and give them tools to actually solve those problems.
Now, you held a session here, and a lot of people were talking about your 22 points of success in negotiating. 22 points?
Yeah.
I mean, usually people boil it down to 3 or 4.
I had more time, so so I kept going.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you also believe that, everyone is in a different situation.
That's right. The reason I actually boiled it down, so to speak, into 22 is because given the amount of time I had and thinking through all the deals that I've been a part of, I thought about what are the kinds of mistakes I see people making. Some of them are big mistakes, some are small mistakes, but different people make different mistakes. So when I shared 22 points, my assumption is that the people in the audience are probably already doing 10 or 15 or even 20 of them right. But there may be a couple of things they'll pick up, and what you're going to find most interesting and important is going to be obvious to them because they've been doing it since they were 10 years old. But what's new to them will be, obvious to you. So that's kind of how we think about it, which is to give a lot of things and let people pick and choose what's most useful to them.
Okay, so, what are the questions that people are asking you when you, at this event, at iCONIC?
At the moment people find out that you're a negotiation professor or you are a negotiation advisor or consultant, there's sort of 3 things that come up immediately. One is, I'm negotiating a job offer, how do I do that? The second one is often about negotiating with family. And the third one, which is most relevant to the actual, the conference and the event here, is as an entrepreneur, you're negotiating all the time. And you're negotiating with investors, you're negotiating with your board, you're negotiating to onboard people, you're negotiating to scale up, you're negotiating on every front. Strategic partnerships, and often you feel like you're the weaker party. How do you walk into a negotiation and not have that anxiety? And one of the things that I mentioned in the session today, and the thing that I probably want to reiterate, is the mistake people often make is they walk into the room consumed by the reasons they're weak, consumed by what will happen to me if they say no, what happens to me if there's no deal. And as important as it is to consider that, what you really want to do in the negotiation is think about what happens to them if there's no deal. What value am I bringing to them that they wouldn't be able to find elsewhere? And when you can start thinking about that, not only do you feel psychologically stronger and behave in more appropriate ways, but it actually allows you to unlock and monetize the value you create for the other side.
And how do you end up, or how do you negotiate getting what you want, but not giving too much away?
So, giving too much away is not the problem. I think, the right attitude to have is I want to achieve my objectives. In fact, one of the things I advise all my clients and my students is it's perfectly fine to convey to the other side, here's what I need to get, here's where I need to get, I'm flexible on how we get there. I'm going to be as flexible as possible on the structure of the deal, stylistically, where I can give, as long as I'm achieving what I need to achieve. And when you can send that signal, when you can say, here's what I need, and I'm going to be very, very stubborn about it, but I'm going to be flexible in other ways, I think people actually deal with you much more openly.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not a fan of ultimatums then?
I am not a fan of ultimatums unless there's sort of two criteria, and I talked a little bit about this in the session as well, and I talk about it in Negotiating the Impossible. The two criteria before I will issue an ultimatum: one, it has to be real. I'm not going to make an ultimatum that I'm not going to follow through on if the other side doesn't do what I said. It has to be a real ultimatum.
Right.
I don't want to lose credibility downstream by then not following through. So that's the first criteria. But even then, even if I'm ready to follow through on it, I will not make an ultimatum if there are other more reasonable ways of achieving those same objectives I'm trying to achieve. Because when you make an ultimatum, people often react negatively. People don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the idea that you're constraining them or you're their boss. And so if I can achieve what I need to achieve without using an ultimatum, why would I use it? And if I feel like I should use it, I have that other test, which is it better be a real one.
Okay, the reason why people issue ultimatums, I think, is because they want to create leverage because they feel like they don't have any.
Yeah.
So is there a better way to create leverage?
Well, there's many sources of leverage, right? And fundamentally, the greatest source of leverage as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as a negotiator in these sorts of deals, your greatest source of leverage often isn't deep pockets. It isn't that you've got a gun in your hand. Your greatest source of leverage as a negotiator is your ability to create value for the other side. If there is some problem of theirs that you can solve, if there are things that you can uniquely do for them, if there are things that keep them up at night that you can help them with, then you can have leverage. That is your greatest source. And so what it requires you to do is start thinking about negotiation, not from here are all the things I want, but what are all the things they need,
right,
and what can I address?
Right, so you try to anticipate what the opposite side is looking for.
So not just anticipate, you can ask. You can be open to when they're telling you. Sometimes they're telling you directly, sometimes they're signaling it in sort of non-obvious ways, but you need to be open to understanding their point of view. Rather than guessing, dig a little deeper.
Okay, so ask them what they're looking for.
Absolutely,
okay.
and respect that.
Right, okay, so, people always say when you're negotiating with somebody, you always try to undercut or overcut. If you're undercutting them if you're offering something, right? Mm-hmm. You're overcutting when you're looking for something.
Uh-huh.
And so, how do you meld the two, I guess, the dollar signs and what you're looking for in terms of numbers?
Well, it's a little bit context specific because there's some environments, some cultures where if you want to get to 100,
right,
and you start at 150 or 200,
right,
you're going to lose credibility. They're going to think you're a liar whether you ever lied or not. If you start at 200 and come down to 100, they're going to feel like you're not playing it straight.
Right.
There are other cultures, though, where if you want to get to 100 and you don't start at 1,000, they're going to think you're a fool. Because the amount of haggling that takes place, the amount of back and forth,
right,
the amount of this undercutting that happens. So one of the things you need to be really sensitive to is the culture, the norms of the environment you're negotiating with, and then tactically you behave appropriately for that environment.
Okay, so if I want to get 100, I'm only offering 50 at that point. I guess technically, how do you start? Again, it's a cultural question, isn't it?
So it is. The one, I guess, principle I could add, though, is, I always advise people, don't make an offer if you can't finish the following sentence. We are proposing X because ... If there's no way you can finish that sentence, if you cannot justify what you're asking for in any way, you're probably asking for too much or offering too little, whatever it might be in either direction. So a good test is, you might say, can I say this with a straight face? But more importantly, can I say this with some justification? Because if not, you run the risk of either offending them or disrupting the process or them going elsewhere, even though you might have been the right partner.
Right. And I assume you've read The Art of the Deal? I assume.
I've read parts of it.
Wait. Let me get this in. But do you agree with some parts of the Trump book?
I would say I agree with the lessons of the book. I'm sure that what he says happened to him is probably true. So from a biographical point of view, I'm sure there's truth to it. As a negotiator, it's probably not the book I would recommend to folks. And it's not really a negotiation book. I mean, it's kind of the art of the deal, but it's really more about marketing and branding. It's more about sort of saying you're great and then hopefully people buy into it. And, I think President Trump is very good at marketing. He's very good at branding. I don't think that he is really a negotiator in most senses of the word.
Okay. All right. Well, good talking to you, Professor.
Nice talking to you as well. Thanks.
All right. So we are going to talk to one of the, we're going to go now to one of the sessions that we saw earlier on today, and that is with the makeup maven, Bobby Brown, who stopped by to give us some entrepreneurial lessons as well.
So since you've left your makeup company, you have done a curated lifestyle shop for Lord & Taylor. You're renovating and reopening or opening a hotel in New Jersey. You've got 2 content-related projects. You've finished a book launch, and you're working on your own products as well. So what have you learned about focus? How do you set priorities when you're doing everything and then some?
It's funny. No one's ever asked me how I focus, because I don't focus, and that's why I'm so successful. I'm constantly all over the place, but I do the best I can. And honestly, being an entrepreneur, my biggest secret to anyone here is get people around you who are good at what you're not, and just tell them what to do.
So that was my next question. Do you have someone who kind of keeps you in line? It's like, Bobby, you need to work on this on Tuesday.
No, I'm usually the one saying we need to do all of this. And I've got notes and I've got books, and I'm pretty targeted with what has to be done. But it gets a little overwhelming, you can imagine.
Is that targeting something you've always had, or something you learned as your business grew?
It's funny. When it's something I'm interested in, I'm really focused. Okay, so I am focused. When it's something I'm not interested in, I can't focus at all on it. So I think that's just being a creative entrepreneur.
Right, that's selective, right? Yeah. So how did you land on wellness as your next area of focus when you could have done anything?
Well, everything I've always done has always been kind of organic, and it just has happened. So I wrote this book way before I knew I was leaving the company, and this is my 9th book, but every one of my books
and this is Beauty from the Inside Out.
This is Beauty from the Inside Out, which is really a simple philosophy that it's not just about putting makeup on your face to look healthy, it's about actually being healthy. So my books have always had it in there, and this is just a natural platform for me. Lifestyle, wellness, health.
So one of these ventures is like a shop within a shop for Lord & Taylor. I saw this as like, oh my gosh, this successful, established entrepreneur doing in-person, real-life retail. That is scary.
Especially now when retail is not exactly the easy place to be.
Right.
So, look, I like a challenge, and I really like doing things that I don't know anything about. That's what interests me. So I don't really know that much about what I'm doing, but what I do know is what I like. And so I've got a little team around me, and I'm bringing in my favorite things. They're showing me things. I'm approving them. I'm learning a lot. I'm working with a lot of young designers, so I get to help them a little bit. So it's been really interesting.
Do you have a vision for what in-store retail should look like versus where it is now?
Well, it's funny. If you go into the New York Lord & Taylor and you see the shop, it's really interesting and cool. And I was saying to them, I would love to go to the Ralph Lauren shop, not his clothes, but his curated shop. I'd love to see his favorite olive oil, his favorite this, his favorite books. I think it'd be really interesting to have a lot of curated shops by interesting people, whether it's Flo Rida, whether it's, whoever of the moment is interesting.
Right. So you've become a serial entrepreneur at 60.
Yeah, I turned 60.
Yeah. Is that a good time to start a business? We hear about all these young entrepreneurs.
Well, what am I going to do? Play golf?
You could. People do pull back.
Right. I know I'm 60. I don't look in the mirror a lot. I don't feel 60. I don't act 60. My kids don't think I act 60. And yes, when is a better had
What's good about it?
What's good about it is I've already raised my family. I have already, had this success with the business. And right now in our world, things are not the way they were. So it's kind of like the Wild West. So there's new and interesting ways to do things. And I think there's a lot of excitement. All these cool young entrepreneurs, the indie beauty and indie food space, indie clothes. It's just a time that is really getting me excited about doing something different.
Yeah. So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned from the cosmetics company and being an entrepreneur for that time that you're bringing into your new ventures?
Well, I started out as an indie beauty person. I then somehow became corporate. I never wanted to be corporate. I never thought I was, but I know I never want to be again. I like to be in charge. I like to be in charge, and honestly, I'm not even worried about being successful. I'm just want to do things I want to do, how I want to do them.
So when you said you liked being in charge,
yes.
Did you ever raise money for Bobbi Brown?
No, my husband and I cleaned out our bank account day one. And so, I really believe that my new venture will kind of be similar. I don't know, we're not going to clean out our bank account. I'm just kidding in case my husband's listening. But we will self-fund everything.
Do you recommend that for other entrepreneurs, that they turn down funding if they can?
You know, everyone has a different path and pattern, so it's not fair for me to recommend, but I do know that there are so many ways to market and PR your business without hiring marketing PR people. I mean, we're in the world of social media, and you know, there's just so many ways to do things without spending a ton of money.
So you, just from what I've read, like you seem to be the master networker. Like there's so many stories that I just ran into.
I've been really lucky. I became the beauty editor of the Today Show because I met Jeff Zucker's grandmother at a book signing, and she said, "Do you want to be on the show?" And I said, "Sure." And I was on the show. And so a lot of things have happened. And you know, I don't do it on purpose, but you meet people, and it's interesting what you guys could do together and who you know.
Did she just say, "Hi, I'm Jeff Zucker's grandmother"?
No, well, I was at a book signing, and I'm sorry, I'm always really nice to people, and I went over and I answered her question, and she said, "I'm so proud of you." And you know, she was like 85 years old or something, and she said, "I've seen you on TV, you know, you're really great." I think I'd been on the Today Show once. And I said, she said to me, "What would you like to do if you could do anything?" I said, "I don't know. I'd love to be a regular on the Today Show." I don't even know why I said that. She said, "Honey, Jeff Zucker is my grandson." And that's how I got on the show. So he came down. This is a true story. He came down, that was Friday. Monday he came down. He said, "Welcome. So nice to have you here." He said, "You know, what do you want?" I said, "Can I be on every month?" He said, "Sure." So he came down the next month, and he said, "Now what do you want?" I said, "Can I be the beauty editor?" He said, "I don't know why not." He never came down the third month, so I never got paid for it. I forgot to ask for money. But 14 years on the Today Show really helped grow the business.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's ways to promote your business without spending a ton of money.
Right.
How did you get Bobbi Brown into stores, onto people's faces when like natural makeup was an oxymoron?
Well, I started the company with a lipstick, and then I made 10 lipsticks. And I only started the company because I met a chemist who said he could.
Okay, how did you just meet the chemist? Do you see what we're getting at here?
Yeah. I was at a shoot for a magazine, and I talked to everyone. I find people really interesting. And the guy came out of we were at Kiehl's, the pharmacy. He came out and he said, "Oh, I'm the chemist." And I said, "Oh my God, I love all this stuff." And he had a lipstick there. I didn't like the lipstick, but he said, "I made this." And I said, "I have an idea. I want to make a lipstick that isn't greasy, isn't dry, doesn't smell like my mother's lipstick, actually looks like the color of my lips." I said, "In the meantime, I make it with a taupe pencil, a creamy pinky blush." I showed him. He said, "I'll make it for you." And he made it for me. And then he called me and he said, "How about we're partners? We'll sell it for $15. You get $7.50, I get $7.50. I thought, that's great. That's how it started.
So how did you sell it, though? How did the selling part of it?
Word of mouth. Well, then I made 10 colors because I realized not everyone has the same lip color, and some people like red and pink. I sold it to friends, to models. I told my friend who was a beauty editor at Glamour about it. She said, "Can I write about it?" I'm like, "Why would you want to do that?" Now I know it's called PR. I think I had my home phone in there. We got a lot of orders. I was a working makeup artist, had one kid at the time. My husband was in law school, and we would just put the lipsticks in a manila envelope, mail it to the people. There was no box, and that worked fine until it didn't work anymore.
What made it not work?
Well, when I was at a party and I introduced myself to the woman that was throwing the party, and I said, "What do you do?" She said, "I'm a cosmetics buyer at Bergdorf." So I said, "Oh, I've got this line of lipsticks." And that's how I got into Bergdorf's. And then we realized we needed a real lab. And one day I was in the elevator.
So the guy Kiehl's is still making these?
No, he's not. One day I was in the elevator of my New York apartment, and I said to the girl in the elevator, "Hi, what do you do?" She said, "I work at a lab in Long Island City." I'm like, "Can I have your card?" And that's where I made the lipsticks. And they still make the Bobbi Brown lipsticks today. I wouldn't let the company, after I sold it, use another lab.
This is a lesson in talk to everybody.
Just be nice to people. It's like common sense. It's not don't do it because you want something. It actually makes you feel good.
Is I do believe as individuals experience the extremes of the good and the bad, the failures and the successes, helps you really hone in on what is extreme you, like where are you at your very best. While I was at Nike, I got to meet a lot of athletes, as you can imagine, but one of my all-time favorites is Bodie Miller, the skier. Do you guys remember Bodie? I worked on his 2006 Torino Olympics campaign, probably actually one of the most failed athlete campaigns in Nike history. That was me, so remember me for that. But actually, what's really good about Bodie's story, I interviewed him for my book, is I wanted to talk to him about how he became so good. Because if anyone who has not followed his career, when it comes to downhill skiing, it's kind of crazy intense anyway. Bodie takes it to a whole different level. And why is that? So when he was a kid, he was actually physically smaller than the other skiers, right? So he would be doing these ski races, coming in 35th, 40th, whatever, certainly not looking like he was going to be an Olympic medalist. And the trainers kept saying, you know, you've got to just incrementally push yourself and improve your performance. That was kind of the training thought of the day. Bodie realized it wasn't working for him. So he goes, all right, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go all in, balls to the wall. And he starts skiing in every training race as if he is going at the Olympics as hard as he can. And he starts like crashing all the time because he's pushing himself beyond his own limit. So what ends up happening is, like, in training, he's... Oh, hello? Oh. In training, he's falling all the time. Race day, suddenly when the moment comes, he has prepared his body to avoid those crashes because he's been pushing harder than anyone else, and suddenly he overtakes the other skiers. So it's a great metaphor for the importance of failure and how it actually, when you push yourself out and fail, it does build your resilience and, frankly, your muscle strength, your emotional strength to a greater level. So that's why I love failure. Are you with me? Yes. I was told this audience of entrepreneurs loves failure. I was like, yay. All right, number 2 is what I call play your specialist game. So we know that we're going to get super into failing and overcoming it. The second is, how do we understand as individuals and as businesses how to find that specialty for who we are? So I came upon this idea by actually looking back at all these great brands that I had worked for and studying some others that are upcoming brands right now and applying it to leadership and personal development. So first of all, I believe the sharper you focus, the better you can be. Here's 3 examples. Airlines today. Who sits there right now and go, I love United? Anyone? Because United, American, most of the world's airlines, their target consumer is human beings with arms and legs, basically. Virgin, however, what I learned when I was there is like, nope, we're going to go after a very, very focused consumer, someone who's into technology, into fashion, into entertainment. We're going to build our route structure, our offering, everything around this very specific psychographic consumer. Years later, they are still one of the most impressive dominant brands. Strava. Do I have any Strava users in the room? Yes, there's one. Are you a cyclist or a runner? Cyclist. Strava is the social network for athletes. It was born about the same time as Fitbit, Jawbone, if you guys remember when that whole quantified self craze started. Now, everyone was going after anybody that wanted to track steps. Strava's like, well, I can either be number 10 in that giant market or number 1 for cyclists. Do you love Strava? See, people who are cyclists love Strava, like passionate about Strava. They've now gone into running and other sports because they're starting with this very passionate athletic consumer. And lastly, the dry bar. This is my favorite. Ladies, do we love dry bar? Men, are you right now going, WTF, don't know what dry bar is? Yes. So I actually interviewed Ali, the founder of Dry Bar, for my book, and this is such a great story. So she, as a child growing up, was super into hairdressing, but she really loved styling hair, not cutting it, styling it, blowing it out. So she basically had some kids, stay-at-home mom. She decides she wants to get back into business, and she starts just styling her friend's hair. Fast forward, it's now a $100 million business. She has created a new category. Because these salons, they're not like walk in and get cut, color, everything else. All they do is blow out your hair. And ladies, is it amazing? It's so great. Like, we all go in there and pop out $65 for a blowout once a week, which we did not do before she created this category. All around a very specialist position of what she loved doing. So what does this mean for you as individuals? Think about those business examples and then think about you, the leader, as if you're a product on the shelf that other people are going to invest in or hire. Are you differentiated? Ask yourself that question. Like, look at all the other people in the marketplace. Are you trying to be all things to all people? Or do you know what your incredible specialty is? And do you know how to say no to a shitload of opportunities because they're not building what you're great at? Because I do believe when you know that, the stronger your foundation, the more you build that, the bolder you will be because you come with so much more confidence.
There you go, colorful Sarah O'Hagan, Flywheel CEO, among some of the great guests that we've had here today at iCONIC New York. It's been a wonderful day so far as we head into the final stretch. Let's show you what's coming up.
Coming up, iCONIC New York continues live, beginning at 3:45 p.m. Eastern.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.